Hello, and welcome back to the Let Me Add to That podcast. My name is Elizabeth Graswich, Executive Director of Public Affairs and Communications at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. We are the largest regional education agency in the United States. We serve 80 school districts and nearly 2 million children. We are excited to use this platform to take a deep dive into the conversations surrounding our students and schools in LA County. Welcome back. Artificial intelligence is here, and some of us are terrified, and others are excited about it. Whether you're already using AI, completely staying away from it, or you're still unsure, either way, we're here today to give you more insight in all things AI. Joining me today are two AI experts. We have LACOE's Assistant Director, Technology, Innovation, and Outreach, Dr. Chris Hoang. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Elizabeth.
And one of our CTE AI business and education partners. He is also the founder and CEO of Guided Compass, an AI work-based learning platform, Mr. Creighton Taylor. Hi, Creighton.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we're going to get started with just learning a little bit more about both of you and your backgrounds with AI and how you got to this conversation here today. Starting with Chris, can you share a little bit about how you entered into the AI space?
Full disclosure, I was not interested in the AI space at all. I think around December of 2022, I was reading articles and I was listening to a lot about ChatGPT and trying to figure out what it could do and why it was doing what it was. I just remember a lot of people freaking out, a lot of my ed tech friends freaking out, going, hey, you need to look at this because it's going to change the way education is. And I think that's when I started looking at it and actually playing with it and seeing what it could or couldn't do. And I think in the beginning, much like a lot of us that first start off when we play with something new, I wasn't an expert in it. I wasn't doing much with it. I used it like a search engine. I learned, hey, you're not supposed to use it like a search engine. You're supposed to use it like you're talking to your best friend or someone close to you. That way you could get the best responses possible. And I think for me, the more I did that, the more I went back to like how I learned as a student, how I became a teacher, and how I worked in education. I was like, okay, we need to get educators on board with this because this is like Google all over again when people freaked out with Google coming out. This is like Wikipedia when Wikipedia came out. It's not going to go away. And I wanted to ensure that teachers and educators were capable of using it in a way that could promote critical thinking and great learning on the student side. And that's the reason why I started to focus more and more on this. And I was blessed with a really good team who's very focused on AI and wanted to do it. And then we're also very blessed here at LACOE with Dr. Eduardo saying, hey, focus on AI, see what we can do with it, and make it something that our constituents, our school districts can use.
Yeah, for me, it was interesting. I tend to like to make the distinction between generative AI and general AI because generative AI is incredible, but my interest in AI actually really began in 2014 or so when there was a lot of buzz around self-driving cars and AI taking a lot of jobs even back then. There was a lot of AI use in social media. Facebook was using it in its newsfeed algorithm, any social network really. And so I really did kind of a deep dive into that world then, and that's when I started to code, and I started to build products around it. And so I actually, started Guided Compass with the idea of creating training data that would be used to help youth find jobs. And that's a big part of what Guided Compass is. Generative AI basically accelerated that. And it allowed Guided Compass and as well as anyone else to tap into this generative AI piece and automatically get the power to recommend jobs and opportunities to people, as well as generate entire documents and entire recommendations in chatbots. So from a technical standpoint, I think it's amazing. And that's kind of how I came at it. I just thought it was something that made a large leap forward for the ability to build products and solutions for people.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think, the more you read about it, the more you hear about it, people are now really trying to start making sure that we back up and make the distinction that artificial intelligence has been around for a really long time. And we just weren't talking about it, and now all of a sudden, like almost a year ago or so, we started hearing about this generative AI. And ever since, there's been this flurry of conversations around it. So when you look at today's landscape, when it comes to AI in education, I mean, how would you both describe that?
I think education as a whole is a little bit slower than the business sector. So that's where we're a little bit behind on everything. Anything we want to put in place, we still have to go through this long, arduous process to say, yes, we can use that. No, we can't use that. Oh, yes, you can use it, but then what's going to happen later? And it just becomes this whole back and forth. And I think that also adds to the frustrations our educators have, because they're like, so are we using this? Are we not using this? Between what happened in New York City where they banned it and all of a sudden they're like, oh, never mind, we're not going to ban it. I think it's just in that stage where it's making it difficult for AI to have a real foothold into the classroom space or the education space. On top of that, all this venture capitalist money is going into all these different ed tech companies where how do we know what's good for our kids and what's not good for our kids? And I think we're just in the wild, wild west of AI in education is the best way I can think about it right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there has definitely been a lot of fear, particularly, the first 6 months of really ChatGPT from November 2022. Honestly, still till today, I think there's still a lot of fear of, okay, well, at first it was just kids cheating, right? The cheating thing was a big factor. But now I think there's just a lot of uncertainty about how this could be used or how it is used. Chris made a good point about ed tech companies that are popping up left and right, that are tapping into this. I don't know if you guys caught OpenAI's Dev Day about a week ago, where they announced like 10 different new innovations that were all groundbreaking. So
but none of them were education based.
Yeah,
that's the part that threw me off, is all this stuff, but nothing about education.
Yeah, and so it just really makes it. I mean, the landscape is changing so rapidly, and education is so slow that it just makes the uncertainty seemingly unsurmountable. And I think with the way that education typically works is, they typically like to plan out their lessons before the semester or quarter starts. And so you're planning out often 6 months, a year ahead. And in that time frame, the whole AI landscape is completely shifted and changed. And so I think that makes things uncertain. I think it also, the fact that AI is so dynamic means that it doesn't fit nicely into a lesson plan per se. And I think that there's just so many use cases that I think it's really overwhelming. I think for students, there's use cases, for teachers, for counselors, for administrators. All of them have really great use cases. And so just wrapping your head around all these different all these different things is a big thing. There's another part to it, I think, that's the labor market changes. And I think that's a big factor in education because, to some degree, education is going to eventually lead to you getting a job. And now with AI, there's a lot of uncertainty there. Where are the jobs now? Are we going to have interpreters the same way that we did before? Is accounting this going to be the same? There's a lot of the things that require like law degrees. Are they going to be employing as many lawyers as they used to? When you can sort of ask AI these law questions and it pops out a response. There's a lot of uncertainty about a lot of career paths that seem to be a clear win that are now kind of being, turned upside down. And even software engineering, ChatGPT can code. And so, there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, well, it's not ChatGPT that's going to change, that's going to replace people. It's going to be people who know how to use ChatGPT, people who know how to use generative AI that are going to be able to thrive in this new workforce. But I think that does definitely mean that career pathways and CTE programs need to take a hard look at what are the actual jobs in the future, and how are we training our youth to be prepared for that? So I think that's a big factor as well.
so interesting in doing what you do. I mean, that's something that you must be thinking about. I mean, I was listening to something earlier today, and they were talking about, there was a point in time where we didn't have web developers as a job description, and look at us now. And so how we address that as an education community is super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There's a new burgeoning space called prompt engineers. Sure, many people have heard of it, but there's projections that that's going to be a pretty nice six-figure job where all you do is literally figure out how to prompt AI. And I can tell you from personal experience, that's not that easy. I mean, to get the right responses, I mean, you have to really go into detail sometimes. And so I think that in and of itself could be a job. And that's something, to your point, like web developers that was a thing really, 30 years ago. And now in the future, there might be new jobs, a lot of new jobs that are created. So there might be jobs that diminish, there might be new jobs that are created. And I think that uncertainty in the field of education that is typically very, very planned ahead and put together, I think that makes it a little bit unnerving for a lot of people, leadership, for teachers, for counselors. And so, yeah, that's definitely a new age. I think this, I do think this is a paradigm shift for education. I'm excited about it, but I can understand the fear of that can kind of come at this stage where we are right now.
And you know what? I just kind of want to add to that, just because I'm listening to you talk and the prompt engineering. As a teacher, I think, or an educator or a parent, I just want them all to know, hey, you've done prompt engineering most of your life without realizing it. It's just an official title now. Like when you're trying to teach your kid how to talk, you're prompting them with the words that you want them to say. So like you want to teach your kid to say dad, you're like, dad, dad, dad. Right? It's the same thing teachers do in a classroom on a daily basis when they're trying to get answers from the kids. It's like, okay, we went over this and they're going to walk you through it. It's just now we're giving it an official title now. And I think that's what's scary is when we get new titles, when you get something brand new, like ChatGPT, that's a new verb for us. When we say ChatGPT, almost everyone realizes what it is, but then you forget Google has a version, Microsoft has a version, Apple has a version, everyone has a version of some sort of AI. ChatGPT took it over. And now you're just, I feel like not you, but like for me, I get more scared because I'm like, hey, where am I supposed to go with this? What am I supposed to learn next? Because like Creighton's saying with the prompt engineering, is like, we can do it. We keep going over and over and we keep refining it. But at what point does AI slow down for us so that we can catch up? And I think that's the biggest fear I think a lot of people in education have, especially since education is so slow in terms like we plan out a whole year. We plan out everything from the month to month to month. So that way, by the time the student is in April, May, they're ready for the state testing or for the AP testing. So then what happens when we're trying to upend it and speed it up so that way the kids can learn at a quicker rate or a better rate or develop those critical thinking skills that AI can assist with?
I love your frame on prompt engineering because I think so many people, the minute you put engineering with the word prompt, it becomes scary, right? You have to actually like design the sentence. Yep. But you're right. We do prompt all the time. And so, maybe it's kind of taking that pressure off a little bit for people to feel a little bit more comfortable.
Definitely. I think that's it. And I go out and I train teachers and educators on prompt engineering. And I tell them it boils down to role playing. You're just role playing with the computer. You're telling the computer what you want it to act like. So for me, I've done it with my students. I teach at a university. I teach the students, hey, have it act like your school admin or have it act like an administrator in an interview and ask it questions that a school administrator may ask you and then provide feedback on the questions. And the AI can coach and help you be better prepared for an interview. And I think that's where we're at is just don't be scared of it. Just start to engage with it and play with it and practice with it. It's no different than riding a bike. When you first ride a bike, you're freaking out. Like I was teaching my daughter to ride her bike. She is crying hours on end because she thought she was going to hurt herself falling. And then she falls once and she's like, okay, that's not bad. And then she figures it out and keeps going.
Pick herself up and start all over again,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
Again, to your point, it's not new. Kids have always like been early adopters, right? So I think that's one of the things that kind of happens is the kids are adopting this. They're out there using ChatGPT, and now we're tasked with trying to get the education community to catch up to the kids, and so that's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely a challenge. And I just want your perspective, Creighton, on the business world. How much of this is a challenge right now?
Well, I think that is probably more of a challenge for non-startups than larger companies. I mean, I know I've seen some stats around like 99% of the Fortune 500 or something like that are the executives are kind of in this like we need to roll out something mode. They're struggling. They're trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to affect our business? How is this going to possibly disrupt something? What products can we launch? I think if you're in startup mode and you're pretty nimble, this is actually an exciting opportunity. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur or you're in any sort of small tech company, anything that's a big change means opportunity, and that means that a lot of the large incumbents are at risk, really, because they're fat cats. They're happy. They're raking in all kinds of revenue and everything. So that anything that shakes that up is typically good. So, I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. I think it's really just anyone that seizes this opportunity, and I think it's actually kind of like education, to be honest. Anyone that seizes opportunity will benefit, and those who are a little bit fearful of it, they're probably going to fall behind.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Just because I know, talking to a lot of educators myself, the ones that have adopted it, they're saying their kids are loving it, and they're like, some of them have even said, look, my kids are bored of AI just because we use it so much that it becomes second nature, and they've learned how to leverage it to write essays, how to help with speech and debate. And I think they're starting to leverage it to a point where school is a little bit more accessible to them, which is what I think it sounds like with the startups is like everything's a little bit more accessible. Let's make it happen. I think that's the same in education. We pick it up sooner than later. It becomes more accessible, one. Two, we can't ban stuff, right? We're scared of cheating. We're scared of all this. But if you're letting the kids do it, does it really become cheating if you teach them how to use it, right?
Yeah. I think that the role of the teacher, in my opinion, probably will change. I think that to some degree, the teacher will have to be a facilitator more than a lecturer. And certainly, there's a lot of life experiences that teachers have that they can draw upon, and the story and emotional connection and the human connection piece is extremely important. But to some degree, when you have tools like AI now, and the ability to personalize the learning now that you really didn't have before, the ability to be a facilitator and a leader in the classroom, I think that seems like it's going to be more paramount, more important in the future. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think that it's an exciting opportunity. I think it's an ability to really make the learning experience far more personalized, far more customized to that specific child or student, so that we really are catering to them, and then the teacher is really leading them and unblocking them towards whatever their goal is.
And it's really about critical thinking, right? Ultimately, that's what we should be teaching them. We're getting into ethical concerns, which is a big area that we discuss when we think about AI. What are some of the other ethical concerns that are out there that are in conversation?
I mean, it's all falling under the same umbrella that I've heard. Well, let me phrase it. Besides cheating and plagiarism, it's where's the data going? Mm-hmm. Because even though founders of ChatGPT, they're like, we don't know where this information is going. We know the system's learning from it, but we don't know where it's going. So if people are putting in names, if they're putting in addresses, birthdays, where does that go? And that's a concern right now because we don't know where any of this information is going. Whereas with the traditional web browser, it's in a cookie. The cookie holds your files. It's most likely going to advertisement. But this one, we really don't know where it's going. That's where I think I've been trying to figure out more and more. And I'm glad Creighton's here because talking to him about it, he's like, I found a way to prevent certain data from getting out from the code I use.
Right. So definitely I think that's a huge piece. I mean, so it's interesting because for any application, whenever you share data that is at risk, especially with personal identifiable information, ChatGPT, just like any app, is collecting that data. What Guided Compass is doing, my application, is basically using what's called an API. I don't know if everyone in the audience knows what an API is, but it's application programming interface. It's very, very big in the tech community. It basically allows applications to share data. A lot of companies will monetize this. If someone is giving anything like an email or social security number, that is at risk of whatever it is. I mean, if it's ChatGPT, that is information that you're giving. But if you're going through a third-party application, there's a way to block that. The reason why that might be beneficial for something like Guided Compass is that we had to go through a stringent privacy and security certification, if you will, to even get accepted into Los Angeles Unified School District. And that basically says that we have to purge all that personally identifiable information when we don't use it anymore, which basically is when the student graduates in most cases. And so that means that there's an extra layer of protection. For ChatGPT specifically, if you look at them, that data is going to a company called OpenAI, which is a little bit weird what they are. They used to be a nonprofit. I guess they're now a capped profit, which is what they say, or some kind of for-profit. But it seems like there's some kind of hybrid model where they claim that their whole mission is around, this is supposed to be for the good of humanity. But there are investors they're going to get a return on their investments. And anytime you have investors, you have to start questioning a little bit. But for the most part, there's a question of, do you trust this organization? Are they going to sell your information to advertisers? Are they going to somehow, are there going to be someone who breaks into their database and steals that information, like credit card theft? So there's always that layer there for sure. That's a concern. But anyway, that's what I was referring to.
So it sounds like, for me, just to break it down in my head, I'm thinking of this like a bank. It's like OpenAI put all their money in a bank. I'm going to borrow money from that bank to create my API or whatever it is, and I just send back some money to them. But because that money's already come to me, whatever I do with that money is now my money that I'm using, right?
Right.
So that means OpenAI doesn't have access to it anymore if I don't want to give them access to it.
Exactly.
Okay, so essentially for me, it's just making it more sense for me. It's like similar to Google and their incognito mode. Hey, Google collects all your data when you're on these web browser, hence why you get all these fun advertisements on your cell phones every so often. Whereas you open it up under incognito mode, it's not collecting that data anymore. So you can do whatever you want in incognito mode and you'll be good. And I think that's where we're at with AI right now, where it's like, how do we get these incognito mode for the schools? Because we have FERPA, we have HIPAA, we have COPA, we have all these compliances that we need. And so how do we start developing these applications that are under the incognito umbrella of Google per se, as opposed to like normal Google Chrome or something like that? So that way we can protect our students. And I think that's the other fear and hesitation, the ethical concerns that a lot of school administrators have brought up, that even our superintendent has brought up, is like, how are we protecting our kids? And I think that ultimately is the biggest concern and biggest fear for me personally, just because I have a daughter. I'm like, I intentionally never put her name on any social media site. I intentionally never post, pictures of her or things with personal identification, because once it's out there, and I don't want it to be out there. I want to protect my kid as much as possible, just like us as educators, us as the county office of ed, we want to protect our kids and our families as much as possible. And that's where I think we're at right now with this whole Wild Wild West, is where's the next stage? How do we protect ourselves now? How do you protect our families? How do you protect the kids? Because if we can't do that, that's where I think for me, I'm okay not putting AI into classrooms until we figure that out. Because if we're selling that data, that's a concern for me. And that's the ethical concerns, like, why are we doing that? And why are the kids being taken advantage of?
And I'm not sure I've ever even understand it to the degree that you just explained it, and what was happening. So I guess the question to me is, we're talking about what we can do as an education community, but what can parents do? What can just regular people do just to protect themselves as they're working with ChatGPT or another platform?
So here, I guess my perspective is that it would be, AI's here, and it's not going to go away. And as Chris mentioned, there's number of, it's not just ChatGPT. There's a number of platforms that have sort of popped out recently, just like scaring you. So I think, to me, it's really, the big thing is education, and it's just like with anything, like the internet, like social media. If we train our kids not to give this information, what information not to give, just like a stranger, right? I mean, right. We need to tell them what information is okay to share and what is not. and how to use the tool, because ultimately it is a tool. If we're able to direct them in the right way, I think that they do come out ahead, because when they do get out in the workforce, they're going to use these tools. They're going to need to use those tools, and often I think that they're going to have a competitive advantage if they use these tools in an effective way. So that's how I kind of think about it. Maybe there's curriculum around this, around educating how we use these tools, but I think that there is a benefit to using them. I also wanted to mention another ethical consideration that I think is probably worth mentioning, which is more broad, and I think that's the job piece. I know that there's some people who are concerned about this automating away all the jobs. And I think there's good perspectives on both ends. And even within the education space, I think there probably is some fear for teaching, for education to be automated away. Maybe AI is the teacher. Maybe AI is the counselor. And so I think there's some ethical considerations around that. And even, before ChatGPT and generative AI, there was talks about universal basic income and self-driving cars was a very similar conversation. What about all the truck drivers? What about all the Uber drivers? What about the Lyft drivers? What are they all going to do? There's going to be so much time, and so I think that there's certainly some considerations there, but at the same time, it's just like a lot of the revolutions and innovations we had in the past with the printing press and manufacturing and the internet and the iPhone, and there's going to be some jobs to go away, and there's also going to be jobs created. We talked about prompt engineering, so I think that we probably should just really try to prep for the opportunities, just because I just don't think that there's a way that we can roll back time, considering the amount of hype behind this and the use cases that people are using it for. So, while there can be a debate on the ethical considerations, I ultimately do think there's a lot of opportunity to come, and I don't necessarily think that it can be the most even productive conversation to some degree, because, it's here. Right. So that's kind of my thought on that as well.
Well, I'm from the newspaper industry originally. Started when it was just print, and so yes. I totally hear that and understand that. But there are a lot of jobs that weren't there. There's a lot of content creators. Content creators didn't exist back in the day. So I hear you. While we're still on ethics, let's talk a little bit about, conversations around bias and how we can maybe use AI in a positive way, and try to be more accessible and inclusive to diverse student populations.
This one's fun because I know when ChatGPT, Midjourney, all these generative AI platforms first came out, anytime you typed in, like Midjourney is an art creation program, you type in and you tell it what you want it to create. 99% of the time when you said, hey, design a classroom for me, it'd be a white female teacher up front and a lot of Caucasian students. However, as people became aware of the fact that AI was biased because it's pulling from data across the internet. I mean, the best way was like in history, they always say the victors are the ones that write the history book. Is very similar to AI. When you look at the search engines, when you look at web pages, when you look at all this stuff, it's all written by predominantly the same people, white, older men. And so the more you look at that, the more you use it, that's their perspective, that's their bias. However, this is where I think we do need to use AI a lot more because it's learning from us. It's learning the system, it's learning what we want. And the more specific we can be with the prompt engineering, the more specific we can say, hey, I want a multiculturally diverse classroom with an African American teacher that's male, then the system starts to learn and it starts to differentiate and it helps address some of those biases. But that can't be addressed unless we tell and we go out and educate, kind of what Karen was saying earlier. We need that digital literacy skill. We need to go out and show them how to utilize this software to take advantage of it in a way where it does address those biases. At the same time, we need the students to understand, teachers and parents, anyone using it, that we have to do lateral reading. We have to go across different platforms, because the one thing that generative AI has is the moment it prints something out, people are right now starting to take it as fact, when in fact it isn't always fact, that it can still make things up, it can still hallucinate. And so we need people to cross-reference it to make sure it's accurate as opposed to just leaving it alone. And once you cross-reference, you can throw it back into the systems like, hey, it looks like you were wrong, ChatGPT. This is a resource I got. Can you go ahead and start correcting it or adjust it? And then what happens is the system starts to learn from it and it starts to address the biases slowly. The more we all use it, the more we engage with it, the more we address the multiculturalness of our society, of our world, the better the responses will be over the long term.
Absolutely. I do feel like there is a bias with, and Midjourney, there's a lot of good examples of that. Okay. And the classroom example is spot on. I feel like I've actually done that myself. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity too. I honestly do. And I think this is where my brain comes into play. I'm thinking about how can I build an app for a specific population, and where it's by default catering to that population, and it's far better than the standard product, so that it does give you that diverse classroom by default. And you are feeding it more data, so that eventually that data, ideally, if you do a good job, becomes the majority, and that is the default. So I think that there is a lot of bias, but I think that bias in this, it's the way AI works, the way machine learning works, is that it's training, just as a child would, on data. And there's millions and billions and trillions of data, and that data is its view of the world, and it's using that data to make decisions. And so if it's a white kid, it's had experiences as a white kid, and that might be the case for the database. That is the case for the database at OpenAI, for the most part, right? There's segments as there is, in the United States, there's segments for all kinds of ways that you can slice demographic data. But I think that there's a bias there. If you can cater to a specific space, just like you can in the App Store. I mean, and they literally, OpenAI launched basically an App Store. That's what they launched in Dev Day. There is ways that you can, basically cater those populations. And I mentioned the personalization piece before. I think there's an opportunity there. To a large degree, I think this is honestly good for these populations, for special populations, because you can personalize more. It's relatively cheap, which means that you have access to information cheaper. The thing is that you have to know how to use it. But if you want to cater more to students who have disabilities or minorities or gender, whatever it is, there is ways that you can segment it out at least more clearly and personalize it in real time with AI than I felt like it might have been harder a year ago to do that, in my opinion. So yeah, I think there's good and bad.
Yeah, which is fine, because I understand where you're coming from, your perspective, creating one just for a special interest group, but I'm actually on the opposite end. I don't agree with that, just because all that does, it then creates echo chambers. That's what Facebook has become. That's what Instagram has become. It's like you start to get all these echo chambers, whereas if we can get at least I would rather one, as much as we can feed into the current giant, whatever umbrella it is that's being utilized, that we can start training that, then that becomes more equitable, in my opinion, because then you're getting feedback from across the world as opposed to one particular platform designated towards one particular interest group, right? Versus everybody. And I think that's where it is right now. And for us, we're in that span where the people who have the access, the people who have the privilege to use generative AI, they're already ahead of the curve. So they're already loading it up with data. We're on the back end now trying to catch up and boost the ones that need to get caught up into that system so we can adjust that system.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Good points. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, it's difficult, but ultimately it goes back to the fact that this is human-centered, right? And that it's humans that are putting this together, and that we all have choices, and trying to hold people accountable and to get them to do the right things for our society with the technology that they're developing. So, going back to the classroom and looking at, how is it currently transforming what teachers and students are doing? And then kind of curious after that about thinking about what to expect in the future.
In my experience working with a lot of educators, the one thing they have all started to say is it's actually making their life a lot easier. They're seeing there's a lot of generative AI websites coming up that help create lesson plans, that help create email templates, that help just reduce all the time consuming stuff. At the same time, there's a lot of great generative AI products where if you load up a rubric and upload an essay and tell it to grade based on the rubric, it comes really spot on to what a teacher would grade. And I think that's where a lot of the educators are enjoying it. They're getting back a lot of the time to actually spend with their students and provide more of that personalized learning, more of that one-on-one instruction that they may not have had otherwise because they had to grade or they had to figure out a way to make it differentiated where they can address the needs of each kid. Generative AI can differentiate that instruction for the teacher based on whatever prompt they put in. So like, for example, I need to throw in a prompt that says, I would like to work with a student who has a reading disability based on XYZ. It's like generative AI would then say, okay, this is how you can address that kid and help them learn. And that's helping them, which then in turn for the students, they've enjoyed learning a lot more because they're getting that one-on-one experience or that personalized learning experience. At the same time, for the students I know who've been able to leverage AI outside the classroom, it's helped a lot with homework because it's a new free tutor that otherwise wouldn't have been there. They can plug in math problems and ask, hey, can you show me how to solve this example? And then they can copy it down and then they have an example that they can work off in the future. Additionally, if they're working on an essay and they don't know what to write because I'm not very good at writing, I have writer's block every so often. I can throw it into the machine and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. Can you give me an outline or an idea how to do this? And generative AI will throw it out. And then now the kid has something to work with as opposed to sitting there maybe 3, 4, 5 hours just doodling and not knowing what to do.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I've seen the teachers who have embraced it have loved it, have really embraced it quite a bit. But I mean, there's probably about 3,000 teachers or so that used Guided Compass in the past year or so. It seems, at least my experience, that those teachers are in the minority still.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's not that many that have really embraced it. I don't know what those percentages are, but it might be like 10, 20%. I don't know.
Yeah, the last statistics I saw was like 15% of classroom teachers have used generative AI.
There you go. That's funny. That was not on purpose. But yeah, so and I've gone through conferences and spoken on generative AI. Actually, just I don't know, like six times or something this year.
Wow.
Not necessarily in LA, one in Atlanta and DC, and I can tell you, particularly I can tell you that it's not everywhere. It's not everywhere, and in certain segments of school districts, it seems like there's just not a culture of embracing this, and not a lot of teachers have used it quite yet. So yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of teachers that are embracing this, but it still seems like they're slow to do so and have not yet sort of fully tested and used it, both for lesson planning or outside the classroom and within the classroom.
That's interesting too. So when you start to try to predict out, right, 5 to 10 years, if we're only at 15% now, who knows what's going to change in 5 or 10 years? But what do you see on the horizon?
Oh yeah, wow, that's a long time. 5 to 10 years. Wow. So if I were to guess, I'd probably say 97% of teachers would be using it at that point. I would even venture to say that it'd be over 95%, just because I think it'd probably be so useful, especially at that point. I do think that school districts and education in general tends to lag because, of course, the planning and whatnot. So in my opinion, I think that there's probably going to be a good 3 years at least for just the basic familiarity still. like just like what it is, what it can do, and how it works at a basic level of using it. Whether it's in the classroom or outside of the classroom, I think for some teachers it will take that amount of time, and then even for some administrators to embrace it, to even have some workshops and I know that LACOE has workshops, but to actually suggest teachers to come to those things and encourage the usage. I do think it's going to take some number of years, and I'm guessing like three years. But I think after that, there will be probably a pretty high adoption, just because I think there's a lot of great use cases. I mean, I'm just looking at it from Guided Compass standpoint. There's just so many ways that this is useful. We're focused on work-based learning, and so for work-based learning, it's really that connection of it's really the career readiness standpoint of how do we get these youth into jobs? How do we get them trained and exposed to the working world and into jobs? And this all affects the jobs piece, right? And so how do we get them internships? How do we get them apprenticeships? How do we get them mentorships? AI allows you to mimic these things, which is kind of a cool thing. You can mimic a job shadow. AI can assume the role of a Google engineering manager and have a conversation with the student.
That's cool.
It can help them formulate a financial plan that includes student loans. It can help with creating a resume and the prep piece, the doing a mock interview with that Google engineering manager when that person, may not have time for every kid to have that conversation. And then they can do a mock internship or apprenticeship where they get an assignment and they turn in an assignment. And this is where I'm thinking like the teacher can be a facilitator in this whole process, but they can have an AI mentor. So I think there was before a really huge bottleneck. There are obviously a lot more students to number of industry professionals willing to dedicate time to these students. But now there's at least a way to mimic some of those experiences, do some trainings. And so just in that space alone, I think there's a lot of opportunity to help. But in general, if you look at English, I mean, I just think there's so many opportunities in history, right? In history, there's more and more history every single year. Well, how can we teach this to kids so that it sticks more? When people talk about history now, it's associations. It's you associate. Okay, what are the wars? What are the toxic leaders? Right? Maybe AI can redesign history so that it's actually a little more sticky for youth. And so there might be ways to redesign all entire subjects. Math, there might be ways that we can redesign that. And I think AI can be a crucial part of that. So I think it'll probably be a pretty big thing, in even just 5 years. But I do think it's going to take some time for that realization.
Which is fine, because for me, I would say 3 years is not the basics, but almost nationally at that point. I think within 3 years, 95% of the teachers will know more about it. And that's mainly because right now we're just, like I said, it's the wild, wild west of AI. It's like, which ones will be the last ones standing within another year and a half? Once those ones are standing, then schools can be like, this is what we're going to adopt. This is what we're going to use. We're going to train. Because like you said, here at LACOE, we do trainings on AI. And I've never been invited to so many school districts to go out and actually present and train their teachers on AI use across the board, because they're like, every school district realizes the value in it. They just now want to engage their teachers. And when they hear that 15% number of teachers actually using it, they're like, that's not high enough. We need to get that to at least 50% this year. And so as we continue to engage with them, I think within 3 years, nationally, 95% of teachers will have a pretty good foundational understanding and even some great prompt engineering skills on how to use AI. I think we're just at the stage where the main emerging trend I think we're at, it's how do we still protect the kids? How do we come up with resolutions? How do we come up with policies that are adaptable? Because schools in general are so rigid and structured. It's like, here's your acceptable use policy for this year. If you violate it, you're in trouble. But then AI got thrown in this year. How do we adjust it for AI? And then how do we keep adjusting it or making it flexible enough where it addresses any issue that comes into play that's associated with not just AI, but technology in general?
So how can developers and education work together to try to solve some of those challenges?
I think it's kind of like what Creighton has been doing with LACE and how he's partnered with us and just talking and getting feedback from both ends. Like Creighton's from the business side, he asks, he talks, he's like, how does this work? How does that work? And then on the education side, we're like, this is what we really need. How can you make this work for us? We need to actually partner more. Most organizations, when it comes to technology, don't create it with students in mind. They create it with business people in mind. And we need to start shifting that mentality to putting it where it's the student in mind, because those are students, when they graduate, if they know how to use your product, that makes hiring easier. It's like, I won't throw Canva out on this because Canva's really good at this. Canva gives every school district essentially free use of Canva, like the premium account. Once those kids graduate from high school after using Canva for so long, they're going to start paying for it because like, this is the best product. I know how to use it. I want to keep using it. I will pay to continue to use it.
Some interesting business ideas you got there. I'm taking notes. No, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So it's interesting. Chris just hosted DigCitCon, and I gave a talk on managing digital identities on that, and it's around a lot of it's this subject, managing digital identities in the age of AI, and so part of it is this idea of, you're going to give some information, you have to create an account, things like that, to get access to the AI, but is it worth it? What is the benefits that you get? And so for developers of AI, I think that a positive side of that is that they can manage a part of your digital identity for you in almost all verticals of your life. So Guided Compass is a good example for work-based learning or career development, but imagine you have a finance app that is your an AI financial advisor. You have an AI, just
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
When you think about it, the possibilities.
Yeah, for every single vertical of your life, whether it's like navigating life, like whether it's going to work, whether it's if your profession is teaching, an AI teaching assistant, pretty much any vertical, it can hold that information and get better and better at helping you. And that's where I think developers come into play. There's an endless number of verticals that can do this. I'm consulting on about 3 outside of Guided Compass right now, and I have side projects as well that are just like different verticals of people's lives and how this can make their life easier, because people don't want to necessarily prompt, they don't want to do the prompt engineering, and this basically takes the prompt engineering off of them and allows these third-party apps to do the prompt engineering for them. So then you can just ask your financial advisor app, hey, where should I invest, or how should I allocate my money? And it has the context of knowing how much money you have, when your last paycheck came in, and how much you probably should spend to achieve your goal that you've already specified. It already knows all that information, and so it helps you right there and then. You don't have to put all that information into some sort of prompt. So I think that's where there's a lot of opportunities. In education, I think. I do think that there's it works similarly. So Conmigo has developed a tutoring bot, which I think is really cool. But even that might be too broad. It could be, what about tutoring in history? What about tutoring in math? These are different. They're not exactly the same. So every time it feels like you've hit a vertical, you typically can go more specialized and do even better job. And that's where I think developers can help. If there's a problem that is some sort of friction, a developer on an AI tool can probably make it a little bit smoother, a little bit better.
We also talked, about how many teachers are just new to this. And so, Chris, you're out at schools talking to teachers a lot, talking to them and teaching them how to adopt AI. What's the advice you're giving to them?
I tell them all they've been working with AI their whole lives. If they have a cell phone in their pocket, they're already playing with AI. If they have Siri, if they have Google, they've been playing with AI for pretty much their whole life. We're just adding to the next iteration, like Creighton was saying, it's generative AI. Now you can create with AI. And that part, I think, is very engaging and fun, and just getting teachers to understand it's not new. It's just a new word. It's something fun to play with. It's something great to try out. And if it works for them, great. If it doesn't work for them, great. AI is a tool. Like all tools, if it's doing what you need it to do, go ahead and use it. If it's not doing what you need it to do, don't use it. Tools will tell you, like any technology tool, when it comes to a classroom, you will know if you need to use it or not. And the more comfortable you are with it, the more familiar with it, the better. That's all it is.
I think in terms of use cases, because I use my background in product management, that's how you think about like building new products. And so I think of it as if answering the question, how can teachers think about this? I think about, well, what are the things you need to do? And each things of those things that you need to do, write them out and figure out the best way to use AI for those things. And it might just be simply ChatGPT for all those things. I mean, that's a start. But a good example is, well, I need to create lesson plans. That's a very common use case. What is the best tools for creating lesson plans that fit your needs? What are the best ways that you can grade papers, grade assignments? What are the best ways to organize curriculum as a whole? That's maybe more detailed for your specific use case. Giving quizzes, giving tests. I mean, each of the things that you sort of need to do, I think of those as, opportunities to maybe make, and it depends on if you love doing those things, that you're probably fine. If you love doing the way that you are doing it. But if there's something that is maybe a little bit annoying or that you think could be faster or easier, then I would encourage looking at AI solutions for that. So again, the ChatGPT, I think, is the default. Bard is another very, very popular tool that's developed by Google. But there's also a lot of products that are built on top of the APIs that these tools provide. Meta has another AI tool called Llama 2. There's a lot of them, and they're all developers are building on top of those that specialize. Just like in lesson planning, for example, there may be extra things that might be particularly convenient for your style of lesson planning. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, to kind of add to that, it's the other thing is, if you don't know which tool, because there's so many different tools out there, two different areas you can go. You can go to your district tech person, because they've already consulted. They've also worked with us here at LACOE. Or you can just go ahead and email me at ito@lacoe.edu, and I will guide you towards the different types of programs and platforms that you can utilize that may address the needs you have.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Because LACOE is really trying to be a resource to the districts right now, and provide support and professional development in this area. So as we wrap, what is one key message that you'd want to leave our listeners with regarding the future of AI in education?
Don't think of this as this scary thing. Think of this as an opportunity. I think that will definitely do the most good for you, especially if you're teaching for another 3+ years. If you're, or whatever your role is, if you're still in it for a number of years still, I think it's definitely going to do you favors to think of this as an opportunity to embrace than to think of this as something to shy away from, because that, I think, will, whether if you shy away from it now, it'll probably become compulsory and forced on you later on. So you're just better off just embracing it now and figuring out how to use this tool.
Yeah, great point. Chris?
I have a slightly different message from that route. Yes, it is scary. I'm going to be honest with you. AI is scary, but all technology is scary. Anytime something brand new comes out, it scares me. But the thing is, ultimately, it's like, what are we here for as educators? What are we here for as parents? What are we here for as community members? Everything I've always learned, it's for the kids. We're doing what's best for the kids and what's in the best interest of our kids. And if that's the case, then we also have to look at life for them beyond schooling, and we have to look at what's going on with the business sector. We have to look at what's going on in the government sector. We have to look at all the other entities and see where everything's going. And if AI is that route, then it's not fair to our kids for us to pull back and not let them have access to us. It's not fair for us to pull them back and say, no, you can't use this until you're 18 or until you're in college or until you're in the business world, because that's doing a disservice to them and it's not equitable, and we're putting them further and further behind. So yes, it is scary, but it's even scarier if we're holding our kids back, because these are kids that will be taking care of us in the future.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for joining us today. Just a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad that we're adding to the conversation that's going on right now, especially focused on AI and education. I really think we're going to have a lot of people listening and helping them to demystify AI and education through our conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For additional resources on the evolving world of AI and education, keep up with us at LACOE, LACOE.edu. Thanks for joining us today.
Please follow the Los Angeles County Office of Education on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Los Angeles COE. That's Los Angeles COE. Or you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Los Angeles County Office of Education.